I'm Dick Moberg, and welcome to our interview series. A lot of interesting people pass through our doors who are doing amazing work in brain monitoring. We bring them into our studio, put a mic on them, and get the personal stories you don't normally hear. We hope you enjoy them.
I am Dick Moberg, and we're at the PAS 2022 meeting in Denver, Colorado. And this is the Pediatric Academic Societies meeting, where you see a lot of talks and sessions on brain monitoring, particularly neonatal brain monitoring. And we had the good fortune to run into Mark O'Sullivan, and thank you very much for spending your time with us to do this recording. And Mark, we ran into him, and he had this amazing technology that he's developed to do neonatal brain monitoring in a tiny little package, and he'll talk to you about that. He's from Cork, Ireland, and Cork is one of those epicenters of neonatal brain monitoring.
Exactly.
And a great friend of mine, Geraldine Boylan, started out in this field maybe 20 years ago, I think, and has trained a lot of people. She's done a lot of pioneering work in this field, and Mark works for her. Why don't you tell us, how'd you get to Cork?
Yeah.
How did you get there with Geraldine?
I'm a Cork local, so
Cool.
did all my schooling there, and at the end of, I suppose, secondary school or high school, I kind of was interested in maths, engineering, music. They were kind of my 3 points to revolve around. I went into electronic engineering in the university in College Cork, so University College Cork. And coming towards the end of that degree, I kind of had an itch I wanted to scratch, which was actually back in the audio signal processing field. So I kind of had always had music and kind of as a background to everything I was doing, and got involved in a master's program which was in audio technology and music technology. And as part of that, I did a lot of work in MATLAB, in audio signal processing. And coming towards the end of that, we were able to do kind of a big chunk of research, and I had the kind of opportunity to do anything in the space of music electronics and end up falling into or deciding to pursue a project in smart hearing aid design, which kind of brought me into my first taste of biomedical research. So looking at the kind of the electronic side, the schematic design, then onto the signal processing side, filtering, pre-processing data, and coming towards the end of that research, I think that really kind of maybe subconsciously set something running in my head that research is something that I wanted to pursue. So I was actually looking towards the UK and other countries for PhD programs, and right under my nose then in University College Cork, they had the Infant Research Centre, which, as you said, specialises in, I suppose, pregnancy, newborn and childhood translational research, and in particular Geraldine's group is in the neonatal brain space. And neonatal EEG, I suppose, isn't all too similar, different to audio signals, in the sense that it's still a raw voltage signal, still needs a lot of pre-processing, and I ended up being lucky enough to get a PhD program there with funding from the Irish government, and through some other funders that the Infant Centre have, and started in as kind of firstly looking at signal processing, kind of touching on a few different topics, from signal processing through to Android development, through to electronics. And I suppose the big draw for me to the Cork Centre was the fact that you had this kind of ecosystem where you had the clinicians, the scientists and the engineers really in communication on a daily basis, and it meant that there was all of a sudden a real focus to the research, and I'd say within the first year or so of my PhD, started to kind of realise that I wanted to go down the path of kind of an end-to-end system, so not just focusing on signal processing side or machine learning side or electronic side. I wanted to see if it was possible to bring an entire system together. At an early stage in the PhD, we got to do these seminar series with Infant, and there was always good feedback from the clinicians and from the nurses and from the scientists, just in terms of the bottlenecks with brain monitoring in neonates. And I kind of started to pursue that, and maybe about by year 3 of my PhD, started to see that there was potentially a translation element to it, that there was potential commercial viability to it. And again, luckily there was a good ecosystem in the university to encourage commercialization of research, and to try and, I suppose, begin upskilling some of the researchers in some of the more basics of entrepreneurship originally, and got involved in accelerator programs, and eventually then got to the end of the PhD, stayed on as a postdoc with Geraldine's group, kind of touching on a few different technologies, because I suppose it was definitely helpful to get a feel of across the whole neonatal and pregnancy space. So looking at EEG again, looking at CTG in fetal monitoring. And then I was supported by Enterprise Ireland, which are the funding body in Ireland who tend to support a lot of the kind of commercialisation work, to try and commercialise some of the outputs of my kind of the latter end of my PhD research. And we're now at the stage where we're kind of ramping up. We have a prototype device which basically is capable of recording in EEG on a portable device and processing the data, and then working with some of the very talented machine learning engineers in the group. So Dr. Alison O'Shea, who developed a deep learning model for neonatal seizure detection, we began working together, seeing if we could look at putting these two pieces together. So I think there's obviously been quite a lot of development in both sides of it. I think the portable electronics and the wireless electronics has advanced, deep learning and machine learning has advanced, but maybe just specific to the field of neonatal brain monitoring, those two sides were always kind of kept separate. So that's what we've tried to do with the NeuroBell project, which is what we've, I suppose, branded the project, and now looking towards commercial avenues, and trying to put those two together. So seeing if we can have a device that can both simultaneously acquire data and process it and give you decision support in a single device that should be usable by all healthcare professionals across all settings, as opposed to just tertiary hubs.
Yeah, I mean it's amazing. Can you talk a little bit about your device? And for the audio recording, I'll describe it. It's let's see, the size. We used to say it's used to use a pack of cigarettes as a size metric in the U.S., but nobody smokes anymore. So kind of trying to figure out what the size of that is. And, everybody in the U.S. has a gun, so it's smaller than a Glock. So, but I don't know what other reference,
just,
but it's like
smaller than a credit card.
Smaller than, right. That's a good one.
It's roughly around the size that I put that. But
it's amazing. The size. Yeah.
We designed the electronics inside it, so it's a single electronic circuit that we then worked on, tried to fit that onto a kind of a small form factor printed circuit board. And then we have the analog front end side, which is where we're recording in the EEG signals. They get amplified, they get digitized, trying to comply with all the IFCN, the International Federation of Clinical Neurology standards along the way, and making sure that this is going to be a clinically usable device. And then after that data is digitized, it gets sent to a processor. And then, as I said, we did quite a lot of collaborative work, I think, and I think that needs to be focused on that. I suppose the engineers need to have the clinicians who are firstly acquiring the years and years of EEG data, then gets annotated, labeled. Then we have machine learning engineers who are working on the machine learning side, and I suppose it was really a team and collaborative effort to get to a point where we did have an algorithm that was working well, and then we looked at shrinking that algorithm down and optimizing that for deployment in portable electronics. But the whole aim here is that you have a system that's not reliant on any external monitors or additional computers or laptops. So I suppose we're trying to simplify the design so that it is usable, because I think a lot of what we're hearing here at the PASS conference is that more and more monitoring is the way to go to have improved outcomes. There's can be shortage of staff in particular in some of these highly specialized fields. So trying to give, I suppose, that objective or quantitative support back to the decision support or to the healthcare team on the ground, it's the technology, I suppose, it's aimed at being able to give, so when the data coming in, it gets buffered, and then basically in real time you'll get an output from the machine learning side, and if that crosses a specific threshold, then the device will start to light up to show that there's a seizure, start to alarm, and then hopefully that alerts the healthcare team that there's a seizure now happening in real time. Hopefully that will mean that they'll go over to the baby, whether that's a clinical signs exam where they're just looking at the different movements in the baby, or else the data is all, we have a wireless chip on there, so all the data is always backed up to a server or to the cloud, and it means that you kind of have a model where you can give the support on the ground, but also have that final review and sign off by the experts who are maybe on the consulting side.
So does this sends the raw EEG through Wi-Fi to a server? That's really pretty cool.
Yeah, we've kind of played around with a few different wireless protocols. Started with Bluetooth, now onto Wi-Fi, and I think it's a case of we keep on evolving as the needs evolve. But there's bottlenecks with all those technologies, and I think it's going to be a trade-off between usability, battery life, connectivity. So at the moment, I suppose, and partly why we're here in PAS is trying to just iron out some of those final usability issues, try and find out where the real clinical need is for kind of these, if we want to call it EEG screening devices, and which hospitals they're in, and what the sort of IT infrastructure is that's in there. So there's a whole pile of work that goes into.
The IT part's always an issue.
Yeah, it
Every
is.
hospital you go into. Yeah.
And probably the further I go into this, the more that I, looking back now, appreciate probably some of the more quality-oriented work that probably should have gone in at an earlier stage, but we're kind of finally getting around to it now in terms of proper design controls, interviewing everyone from the end user to the the person who's going to be the advocate, and
I just want to say the when you really get far into it, you'll probably wish you stayed into music. Right?
yeah. I always have that to fall back on.
That's what happened in my career. Right?
Okay.
It's just the more you get into things, you go, wow. But I think you're really on your way to solving a major problem here, and that's what struck me with this.
Great.
Is how portable it is and how usable it is for within a hospital, and I can also think of how usable it would be in hospitals that don't have a Geraldine Boylan, or they don't have a Bob Clancy, or they don't have these experts in seizures. And that's where I see this can make a major impact in the field.
No, exactly, yeah. I think it is in those hospitals that are currently maybe a bit under-supported in terms of their objective means of monitoring these babies, and they have difficult decisions to make in terms of whether to potentially treat seizures without having EEG confirmation. They have difficult decisions to make whether they need to transfer that baby, and I think hopefully portable devices like this will be able to help give them some objective decision support to help make those decisions, and perhaps make for better communication then between the tertiary hospital that the baby might be referred to, and have kind of some early stage data. I mean, if these babies can now arrive at the cooling centres and the tertiary care hospitals with some EEG data to support it, potentially solves one of the bottlenecks there. So we're we've had quite a positive experience here so far in PAS, and really excited for kind of the next stage of moving into the kind of design for manufacture stage, and kind of looking at the clinical trial end and some of the more business oriented side of things, and excited to really start to see this being implemented in clinical practice.
That's great. And why don't you describe the electrodes here? I know that you right now it's the one from Lifelines, which is looks like a what does that look like?
A spider, potentially. Yeah. I mean, I suppose we tended to stay away from the electrode side in terms of design ourselves. So our device is standalone and aiming for it to be used with whatever the clinicians are comfortable using.
Yep.
So whether that's plugged into like the Lifeline headcap is a nice product that seems to really fit that model of an easy use EEG system.
Yep.
There's likely probably other electrodes out there as well, and I know some clinicians like to use needle electrodes, some like to use gel electrodes. So I think it's a case of just trying to find again that trade-off between making sure that they're comfortable using the technology.
And the fact that you might keep that a variable, I think is smart. I know in Europe they use needle electrodes a lot.
Yeah.
In the U.S., not so much at all. There are some papers coming out saying, why would you stick a needle in an infant? It's so like, well, because it's easy and it gives you a good signal, and it might help save their lives. So but so there's a lot of variability. That's good.
Signal quality is obviously so important to EEG. It's you're down into the microvolt range, like compared to ECG, which is hundreds of times larger. So signal quality is really important. So I think that's on the device as well. We do have an impedance measurement, so at least there is some quantitative metric of is the data you're recording of high quality, is the skin impedance low enough, so do you have good contact with the scalp. I think it's really important to try and integrate that into kind of an easy use system.
No, that's great. And I remember when Geraldine first started this and got that welcome funding, one of the goals of that, or one of the requirements, was to get what they did commercialized. And I know people that get those grants, and even in the US, there's a commercial goal. Very few people meet it. I mean, you get the money and then it's just, this is too difficult. And you've done that, and I think it's very impressive that you're carrying that through. And I know Geraldine's probably very happy that finally the work that she's been doing is now going to be a commercial product.
Yeah, no, I mean, like the Wellcome Trust, which funded, I suppose, a lot of the earlier work on the machine learning side, there's been a few, very good outputs out of that. The answer algorithm has been, has been put through clinical trials, and I suppose in the case of the NeuroBell project, we benefited from the fact that there was data there from those kind of grants and large scale projects. So we're very much indebted to the work that had gone on in the centre before us, and the level of annotation in this data that enabled the likes of Dr. Alison O'Jay to develop new machine learning models as well. So it's great. It's nice. I suppose the Infant Centre is a translational research centre, and it's just really nice to be at the end now where on a range of different projects where there is, you can see the kind of end in sight in terms of the clinical usability. So it's a really exciting time, I think, in terms of a few different commercialization outputs.
Yeah, no, that's great. And thank you very much for doing this interview.
It was lovely to meet you, and it's great to chat with you.
Yeah, and I want to check in with you a year from now and see how you're doing.
Hopefully, yeah. I think I'll definitely be back here next year. It's a great conference to be.
Well, then we'll check in with you, and I wish you the best of luck.
Thanks, Million.
Great project. Thank you.
Thanks, Million, Dick.
Good.
Cheers.